We frequently see debates about the validity of gay marriage, but my question is, why is it just assumed that I'm okay with heterosexual marriage? Why should I just be okay with that? Why is that like the baseline? Forget whether or not I think gay marriage is okay. Why is marriage okay? Frankly, I think we should stop debating gay marriage until someone can clearly explain to me why I should support straight marriage. I'm just not convinced that heterosexual marriage is a good thing. And I realize that most of what I'm going to talk about in this video is what you would call anecdotal evidence. Yes, there are exceptions to every rule. Of course, there are plenty of heterosexual couples that my commentary will simply not apply to. But still, these experiences I've witnessed over my life seem to just be very, very informative. It would be silly to ignore that. All I've seen from straight couples who've been married for a long time is bitterness, resentment, a habit of mistreating their spouse, maybe resentment for their spouse. I fully reject celebrating people mistreating each other for a lifetime. And to be perfectly frank, that is a large portion of straight marriages. People in heterosexual marriages develop long-term habits of mistreating each other. In my personal opinion, this boils down to two problems. Problem number one, our society has consistently normalized the concept that we simply need to accept that heterosexual relationships naturally involve division, tension, misery, and mistreatment. Problem number two, religion prevents the critical thinking necessary to address the many issues within heterosexual marriages. Think about problem number one. How frequent is it for songs and movies and TV shows and any type of form of media to be teaching us that people mistreating each other is just a normal part of heterosexual relationships? Unfortunately, to many people, this has morphed into a message that pain, disrespect, and fighting are simply things that you have to accept if you want a heterosexual marriage. My takeaway is very different. If misery and mistreatment are just natural parts of a heterosexual marriage, then we should be rejecting heterosexual marriage. And we should certainly oppose heterosexual marriage being viewed as any kind of moral standard. The chaos and volatility of heterosexual relationships are reasons to avoid them or even look down on them. They just fail to meet any realistic moral standards. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of the things that come to mind when I talk about things in the media that make us think that mistreating each other is just a normal part of heterosexual relationships, a lot of people would say that that kind of media is just a matter of art reflecting real life. But if something very negative shows us something that's true to life, shouldn't that make us stop and go, hey, shouldn't something change here? And instead we just accept that that kind of volatility has to just be a part of relationships because that's what heterosexual relationships are, simply because men and women are different. Which brings me to the religious arguments around this. I never understood growing up why there was so much messaging around celebrating the differences in men and women. If anything, the differences in men and women just show us that homosexual relationships are far more logical. I don't know about you, but I am not interested in coming home to a constant gender war where the other person is constantly berating me and justifying it because they're an opposite sex. I don't see the appeal of that, really, to be honest. Maybe I'm just different. But anyways, religious messages often teach people that marriage is not only a good thing, but something you should feel morally obligated to do. Unless, of course, you're gay. In that case, you should just accept dying alone. But the problem is, they teach people that it's so simple. When it comes to religious messaging, Christian in particular, just because that's what I grew up with, but religious messaging in general tends to teach people that marriage is just something they're supposed to do in life. And while they don't necessarily outright tell people that it's something easy, it often comes from a faith-based mindset. In other words, you have people who literally believe that they can pray their problems away, telling people that if they just go, get married, it's all gonna work out somehow. I don't know that that's competent. I don't know that that's real. That seems very inauthentic and odd to me, we'll just say. Then these people get into marriages, and the next thing you know, they're facing a lot of real-life issues that they're completely unprepared to deal with. For example, a lot of religious people like to mock the idea of living with someone, being sexually active with someone before you marry them. I watched a sermon the other day saying that, finding out if you're sexually compatible is the easiest thing in the world to find out. Well, first of all, that's a silly thing to try to find out after you've made a lifetime commitment to someone. A lifetime commitment. Yes, let's wait till after we've committed our lives to each other to find out where we stand there. That's intelligent. But second of all, you know what? It's just sex. So for a lot of y'all, maybe, yeah, it was easy. Some people have body parts that don't function properly. Some people want really different things out of their sex lives. You're gonna have a lot of couples with opposite libidos. What are they supposed to do in that situation? I am not religious, so you know what? For those of you who say that you can pray and God gives you comfort, maybe that's the case. But prayer is not just this blanket answer to everything. And unfortunately, it's prevented that way. So when couples are facing real life difficult issues for them that are a major point of strain on their relationship, instead of being given actual guidance that's going to help them overcome those problems, they're simply told to just have faith and things will somehow work out and fall into place for them. That's not how real people find real solutions. Another issue is abuse in marriages. Pastors are known for telling women to tolerate abuse in their relationships. It might not be quite as common as it used to be, but it's still out there. The idea that it is more moral for someone to have to suffer physical abuse at the hands of their spouse as opposed to divorcing is insane. If you believe that it's okay for someone to beat somebody else because they're married, I really don't care what you have to say and what your moral standards are in regards to marriage. Religion provides a very odd, cherry-picked vision of marriage. They're not going to tell you how hard it is because they want you to just do it. It's just what God expects you to do, therefore you have to, which is just a terrible message. But another common problem I notice among religious people who advocate that people should get married as soon as possible is how little respect they have for the actual commitment itself. Have you ever noticed how much religious people will brag about having a really short amount of time to date the person before they got married? Maybe you didn't actually know what you were committing to. You were clueless about what you were committing to, but go off about how that's morally superior. I had a relative, for instance, who told me that she only dated her husband for 4 months before getting engaged to him. 4 months. Okay, so did you actually learn who this guy was before making a lifelong commitment? Or were you just horny as hell and wanted to get married so you could do it without feeling guilty? I'm sorry, but that is a factor in people rushing into marriage. If you truly believe that marriage is important, whether you mean it's important to you or important on a societal level, at the very least you should care about learning about your potential spouse as much as humanly possible before you make the decision to get married. So for those of y'all out here pushing this idea that heterosexual marriage is the most good and decent thing you can do, who got engaged after a couple of months, it's really hard to take you seriously. You didn't care what you were committing to, you just cared that you finally got somebody. You just cared that you could update your status. You just cared that you could say you were married, and that you finally had a moral free pass to have sex with somebody. That's not respecting marriage. I just find it very odd that those are the kind of attitudes that are so common for people who lecture the rest of society on not respecting heterosexual marriage enough. Another common issue I find with religious messages when it comes to heterosexual marriages is that a lot of the conflict, it just comes from people being different because one's a man and one's a woman. Again, that's just an argument that homosexual marriages are more logical and rational. But anyways, it really just takes the volatility that people are experiencing in heterosexual marriages and just makes excuses for it. I don't care what you're upset about, your sex is no reason to mistreat somebody. It might provide some insight as to why you're upset about something. It might provide some insight as to what the cause of the conflict is. But no, you do not have to accept constant fighting and volatility in your marriage. That's ridiculous. Getting married should not be about seeing how much you can handle before you break. And I'm sorry, but I see so much of that in heterosexual marriages around me, but people are unwilling to even consider separating for a time period to heal their marriage or a divorce because their religion tells them that it's wrong. And I think that's an absolutely heartbreaking thing. If you're coming home to nothing but fighting and breaking dishes and trying to hide from or avoid your spouse, then yes, it is more moral to get divorced in that situation than it is to stay married, because obviously the person you are married to does not have a moral standard for your marriage. But try telling that to someone who's religious. And I'm not saying that divorce is something to celebrate either, but I just see no reason to support heterosexual marriages. Y'all normalize mistreating each other. Y'all normalize keeping your kids in a volatile situation just because divorce is bad. I'm not okay with supporting those things. So you can sit there and tell me all day long how much you oppose homosexual marriage and how it's so bad, but I don't see good examples from those who are in heterosexual marriages. If heterosexual marriage marriage is so morally superior, then why is it so impossible for y'all to act in a morally superior fashion? Y'all can't manage to set good examples for your kids. Y'all can't manage to keep volatility and fighting out of your marriage. I don't support those things. And if you know that you're raising your kids in a volatile, unhappy home just because you've decided that divorce is a bad thing, shame on you. You are failing as a parent and you just don't care because marriage. I'm just over this idea that heterosexual marriages should be talked about as if they're just automatically a good thing. When the reality is that if I think of every single heterosexual couple that I have ever interacted with in my entire life, there's probably only a handful of them that were decent, that were marriages I could actually have some respect for. Obviously, there's plenty of things that go on behind closed doors that you don't know. But it's just so common for people in heterosexual marriages to blatantly mistreat their spouse in public, degrade them, demean them, and they just don't care. And we're all supposed to just turn a blind eye to it and pretend that it's fine because that's supposed to just be a day-to-day part of a heterosexual marriage. I do not support that. And that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed this video, have this video, or you're just a quarter of this video, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe.